Morant is dead.
The concept of identity is a curious thing.
How would you describe yourself?
There's nothing. There's no self.
Due to its multifaceted and ever-changing nature, it can be hard to comprehend who we actually are.
When underneath that is something else. And so we all have the feeling we meet somebody, we have our first impression, and little by little, we see something else.
Beyond the surface lies our personality, values, relationships and experiences, all of which are tied together by our memory. But memories are inherently fallible. They're a mixture of truth and lie.
You know, how you remember things is not necessarily the way it actually happened, but it's the way you remember it. And it's maybe even more valid than the actual thing in some ways.
If we were shown our memories as they actually happened, how would our minds react to this? Would we accept them? Would we deny them? Dependent on our actions, it could be enough to fracture us.
So then
I waited until 1995 when Barry and I started writing Lost Highway.
3 years after Fire Walk With Me's disastrous reception, David would collaborate with author Barry Gifford to write the script for Lost Highway. Lynch was very familiar with Barry and his world, having previously adapted his novel, Wild at Heart, which in a controversial decision ended up winning the Palme d'Or at the 1990 Cannes Film Festival.
What was the idea of Lost Highway?
Well, actually, part of it was the two words Lost Highway, which Barry Gifford had written in his book Night People. And for some reason, those words made me dream.
David would combine the title with an idea that he had had on the last day of shooting Fire Walk With Me to form part of the inspiration for Lost Highway.
And the fragments...
What was the fragment, I mean, other than the title Lost Highway?
A couple receiving videotapes.
At the doorway.
They went more each tape, and a fear arose.
Yeah. It's the invasion of their...
Right, what does it mean?
Space.
Right.
While the title and videotape idea were important, David would later admit that the single biggest inspiration for Lost Highway was the O.J. Simpson trial that took place during 1995.
Looking back, I see it as starting with the O.J. Simpson trial that I was kind of obsessed with. And it struck me how someone could do murders and then go on living with themselves.
The inspiration of O.J.'s trial certainly helps in contextualising the main events of the film. Lost Highway's opening credits are accompanied by the aptly titled track I'm Deranged by David Bowie, which provides an insight into Fred, who is slowly losing his sanity.
He's the kind of a regular guy, and he's smart, and he could be someone in trouble. And he could be someone sitting on a lot of trouble.
Fred loves his wife Renee, but he is also fearful of losing her. He is deeply insecure, which leads him to act in an increasingly possessive, jealous and aggressive manner.
both Fred and Renee have got locked in each other's kind of this grip on each other, which they are incredibly vulnerable and raw to each other. And it's a place that's very bad to be if you're in a relationship.
Fred struggles to differentiate between fact and fiction. He tells Renee about a dream he had last night. Which later plays out from the perspective of Renee.
Fred, where are you?
Fred also hates video cameras because they contradict his version of events.
I like to remember things my own way.
Fred's state of mind is reinforced by this section of the film's extensive use of fades in and out. The film's fractured and non-linear plot, as well as the production design.
Production design is its mood, it's things that have to be correct dictated by the script.
Out of all of Lost Highway's various locations, the house that Fred and Renee share is the most significant. The Madison home functions like a labyrinth with dark corridors leading to unknown places, making it incredibly difficult to ascertain the structure's exact layout. The living room and bedroom are sparsely and specifically decorated, with David himself making some of the furniture we see.
I wish I could build everything, but it would take forever, like Eraserhead took.
And finally you have the house's colour scheme, consisting of beige walls, grey floors, red drapes, and black bedsheets, all captured under constant shadow. There are ominous and mysterious forces at work here, a great darkness that hangs over both the home and Fred and Renee's marriage.
Mysteries, we love mysteries. Life is filled with them, and some of them are very abstract.
Undoubtedly, one of Lost Highway's biggest mysteries has to be Renee Madison. We know that she likes to laugh, and she reads, but this is hardly enough to form any sort of picture of who she is. With Fred unable to satisfy Renee, he suspects that she is having an affair with Andy. Fred is completely unreliable as a narrator, but how exactly does Renee know Andy?
He told me about a job.
What job?
Her vague answers only make Fred more doubtful, more insecure, and more distrustful. The many mysteries that surround her are never answered, with Fred being placed on death row and sentenced to the electric chair. Fred is unable to comprehend or accept what he has done, so he assumes a new identity and enters a fugue state.
And we started, working on this, and in working on it, found out there is a medical name for this thing, psychogenic fugue, where the mind tricks itself, and you can either take on another identity or you do what you have to do to hide those things from yourself.
To try to explain the fugue state in literal terms is completely pointless.
And fugues at least make me feel insane. And so I like to experiment with, the form of a fugue.
However, the fugue does follow a general structure that is worth noting. Pete is very much the antithesis of Fred. He is a great mechanic who is very popular and well respected.
A lot of people are going to be real happy that you're back.
He is young, virile, and completely in control of his relationship with his girlfriend, Sheila.
You still care about me?
But the fantastical world of Pete begins to fall apart as traces of Fred's world begin to seep in. Firstly, he hears Fred's insane saxophone solo on the radio, and then most importantly he is introduced to Alice, or as Fred knows her, Renee.
I play in this movie two different interpretations of the same woman. I know it's strange.
Soon after meeting Alice and her initiating their romance, Pete begins to lose control. He becomes increasingly insecure, possessive and jealous, just like Fred, and allows Alice to take over.
Why didn't you just leave?
For the sake of her love, he ends up taking out Andy before being permanently denied by Alice.
You'll never have me.
Which causes the fugue to end and the re-emergence of Fred. This outlines the general structure of the fugue, and even though not everything in it can be understood, it in no way detracts from the film.
Some things, strangely, are not so understandable. And but when things in films are not so understandable, people become worried. And yet they are, in some way, understandable.
One of the most important things to consider when looking at any of David's works is that at his core he is a painter, and he loves to paint in abstract and symbolic ways.
Many of the things that you subconsciously use in painting, you use in film. But I don't think about it so much as feel it.
This approach makes David's film so much fun to analyse, with the range of potential interpretations being nearly infinite. I particularly like the shot of the burning cabin in reverse, which is first shown as Fred sits and stares at his cell door. At this point, Fred's mind is completely destroyed, and in order for it to protect itself, the mind has to enter a fugue state. This is why the shot is shown in reverse, as it's representing the reversal of his mind's destruction. I also love the shot where the room spins into an image of Alice, which tells us that Pete is completely consumed by Alice at this point. Both of these are really beautiful examples of visual storytelling. In terms of characters that are abstractions in Lost Highway, chief among them would have to be the mystery man played by Robert Blake.
It's called Lost Highway.
Uh-huh, that's David Lynch, Lost, yeah.
And I play the devil, I think.
I think Robert's interpretation of the mystery man being the devil is a good starting point. The mystery man first appears atop Renee's face before he fully introduces himself to Fred at Andy's party.
We've met before, haven't we?
Clad in all black, the mystery man represents something that is familiar, and he is able to exist in multiple places at the same time.
You invited me. It is not my custom to go where I'm not wanted.
He is also a friend to Mr. Eddie, or as he's also known, Dick Laurent. Mr. Eddie is a person you don't want to mess with. He is involved in the production of adult films, is known to the police, and possesses a rather perverse moral code.
Fucking tailgate! Ever! Tell him you won't tailgate. Ever!
Despite Mr. Eddie's erratic behaviour, he initially expresses great admiration toward Pete. The issues between them only occur when Pete is introduced to Alice. So what connects Fred, Pete and Mr. Eddie? The answer is Renee, whom they all love and whom they're all insecure about losing. If we pay close attention, the mystery man appears when these men are all at the height of their insecurities and are in fear of losing Renee. He is there when Fred is unable to sexually satisfy Renee. He is there at the party when Renee is being overly friendly with Andy. He is there at the cabin door as Fred sits in his cell after her death. He is there when Mr. Eddie suspects Pete and Alice's relationship, and he is also there after Alice rejects Pete.
Her name is Renee. If she told you her name is Alice, she's lying.
The mystery man preys on the insecurities and fear of Fred, Pete and Mr. Eddie, pushing them all to commit unspeakable acts. He is the embodiment of evil, and the reason for his actions is anyone's guess.
There are many things, I think, that are out there that we don't know about, but sometimes, you get certain feelings.
Lost Highway concludes with Fred speaking into the intercom of his house, which turns the film into a Mobius strip, with everything coming full circle.
Dick Laurent is dead.
The police then arrive and chase Fred into the desert. I look at this as another piece of symbolism, with the police in fact escorting Fred to the electric chair, where he is consequently executed. What a journey Lost Highway is. The film remains one of Lynch's darkest and most incomprehensible works, with even David himself struggling to categorise it entirely.
Definitely is a kind of a film noir thing, but still it has a different elements going from a straight-ahead film noir. But it has that film noir thing for sure.
But even though the events of the film are largely incomprehensible, David's philosophy still shines through. David once said to the Los Angeles Times, and I quote, "Absurdity is what I like most in life."
I like absurd things.
And the world of Lost Highway is filled with events and characters acting in absurd ways. Why do certain things happen? Why do Fred, Pete and Mr. Eddie act the way they do? Why do all of them fall for Renee?
The most important thing is what you fall in love with. And the reason you fall in love is an abstraction. Nobody knows why they fall in love with this woman and not this one.
Yeah, or why they fall out of love.
Or why they fall out. Well, they know that a lot of times.
Yes, they do.
The answer is there is no answer. The universe is irrational and meaningless. One of the things that makes Lost Highway special is that it illustrates this concept not just with its characters and plot, but also with its structure. Even some of the film's thematic explorations, such as that of identity, benefit from David's surrealist and abstract style.
And your name? What the fuck is your name?
Overall then, I believe Lost Highway deserves recognition as one of Lynch's greatest and most unique works. An enigma that will permanently endure and terrify, because who knows what awaits on the Lost Highway, or where it will lead.
I get the psychogenic fugue almost every afternoon.